My beloved child, something shifted behind closed doors before anyone thought you would ever hear about it. A conversation that was supposed to remain ordinary suddenly became a decision, and that decision placed your soulmate in a position they never expected to face. Stay with me, because the most important part is not what the family proposed. It is what your soulmate did when they realized the proposal could change everything between you. It began quietly. Their family had been discussing the future, speaking about stability, expectations, timing, and the kind of marriage they believed would make sense. Your soulmate listened without saying much. At first, they assumed it was another familiar conversation that would eventually fade away. Then one sentence changed the atmosphere completely. Someone in the family revealed that they had already taken a step forward. An introduction had been considered. A possible marriage path had been discussed. And suddenly, your soulmate understood that this was no longer a distant idea. But here is where the story turns. Instead of feeling excited about the future being arranged so neatly, your soulmate immediately thought about you. Your name may not have been spoken in that room, yet your presence became impossible for them to ignore. Every memory returned differently. Every unfinished conversation. Every moment when they wanted to say more but remained quiet. Every time they wondered whether you still felt the same connection. And beneath all those thoughts came one question they could no longer avoid: if I accept the future everyone else has chosen for me, what happens to the person my heart keeps returning to? Don't skip this moment, because their answer did not arrive instantly. For a few seconds, your soulmate remained silent. The family interpreted that silence as uncertainty about marriage. But they misunderstood. Your soulmate was not questioning whether marriage mattered. They were questioning whether a marriage chosen without emotional truth could ever become the future they genuinely wanted. Then someone asked them directly, "What are you waiting for?" That question landed differently than anyone expected. Because your soulmate suddenly realized they had been waiting for clarity while time continued moving. Waiting for the perfect opportunity to speak. Waiting for some unmistakable sign from you. Waiting until they felt completely certain that opening their heart would not change everything. And now the family decision had removed the comfort of waiting. Stay a little longer. The turning point is approaching. Your soulmate finally looked up and said something that made the conversation stop. They explained that they could not agree to a major decision simply because everything looked perfect from the outside. There was something unresolved in their heart. Someone they needed to understand before choosing a completely different path. That someone was you. But they still did not reveal everything. Not yet. Because another family member asked the question your soulmate had been hoping nobody would ask: is there already someone? The room became strangely quiet. Your soulmate could have avoided the question. They could have changed the subject, protected the secret, and allowed everyone to continue believing nothing stood between them and this marriage decision. Instead, they hesitated, and smiled. Not because the situation was simple. Because for the first time, hiding what they felt seemed harder than admitting that you mattered. Something huge is waiting for you, because what happened next transformed this from a family conversation into a personal choice. Your soulmate was no longer choosing between two people. They were choosing between two futures, one that had already been prepared for them, and one they would have to courageously create for themselves. And just before they answered the question everyone was waiting on, they made one unexpected request. They asked for time. Not weeks. Not months. Just enough time to speak with one person before giving the family their final answer. And deep inside, they already knew exactly who that person was. But what happened during that small window of time changed the meaning of everything. Your soulmate walked away from the family conversation carrying a question they could no longer postpone. They had asked for time, but now time itself seemed to be asking something from them. Are you finally going to choose what feels true, or will you keep allowing silence to make the decision for you? For the first time, the future looked divided into two completely different roads. One road was already prepared. It was comfortable, approved, predictable. Their family believed marriage could bring stability and a clear direction. From the outside, everything seemed perfectly reasonable. There was only one problem. You were still in their thoughts. And that changed the entire equation. Don't skip what comes next, because your soulmate began remembering details they had tried to dismiss before. Not dramatic moments. Small ones. The way a conversation with you could remain in their mind long after it ended. The strange calm they associated with your presence. The questions they almost asked you. The words they typed and reconsidered. The possibility they kept placing somewhere in the future because facing it in the present required an answer. Now there was nowhere left to hide from that answer. Then something unexpected happened. Their phone lit up. For 1 second, your soulmate thought it might somehow be you. It wasn't. It was a family message reminding them that everyone was waiting for their decision. And strangely, that simple notification created the clarity they had been searching for. Your soulmate suddenly understood something powerful. They were being asked to make a lifelong choice while an important truth remained unfinished. Saying yes simply to satisfy the moment would be easy. But easy and right were no longer the same thing. Stay till the end, because this is where their thinking completely shifted. They stopped asking, "What will everyone think if I refuse?" And started asking, "What will I think years from now if I never discover what could have happened with you?" That question changed their posture. Their hesitation began disappearing. They were not rejecting marriage. They were refusing to enter it while another chapter remained emotionally unresolved. And then they made a decision nobody in the family knew about yet. Before answering them, your soulmate would reach toward you. Not with some perfectly rehearsed speech. Not with promises about a future neither of you could predict. They simply wanted truth. They wanted to know whether this connection existed only in their imagination, or whether you had also felt something unfinished between you. If this story is speaking to something inside you, you can share it with someone who loves these deeper messages. Leave your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe so you can continue this journey with us. Because the next detail changes the direction again. Your soulmate opened your conversation. Their fingers paused above the screen. They wrote one sentence. Deleted it. Wrote another. Deleted that too. Then they realized no carefully constructed message could carry what needed to be said. So they chose something simpler. Something unmistakably sincere. A message asking whether the two of you could finally talk honestly. But before they could send it, someone from the family approached and said, "We need your answer now." Your soulmate looked at the unsent message, then toward the person waiting. Two futures had suddenly arrived at exactly the same second. And this time, your soulmate did not ask for more time. They made their choice. And then came the sentence nobody in that family had prepared themselves to hear. Your soulmate turned away from the unfinished message for only a moment, looked directly at the person waiting for an answer, and calmly said, "I cannot agree to this marriage until I have been completely truthful about what I want." Everything changed after those words. Because suddenly they understood the deeper choice standing before them. This was never simply you versus marriage. It was truth versus rushing. It was choosing a future consciously instead of accepting one because everyone else had already prepared it. Your soulmate finally replied, "I won't make a lifelong decision until I understand what this connection really means." That answer shifted the atmosphere. One family member who had barely spoken throughout the entire conversation finally stepped forward. And what they said surprised your soulmate more than all the pressure that had come before. "Then find out." 3 words. That was all. But those words opened a door your soulmate thought the family had already closed. Don't skip now, because there was another surprise waiting. The marriage decision had never been as final as your soulmate believed. The family had moved quickly because they thought your soulmate wanted direction. They had interpreted silence as readiness. But silence had meant something completely different. Your soulmate had been uncertain because of you. And suddenly everyone could see it. If this journey has kept you thinking about the difference between pressure and genuine choice, share it with someone who might connect with that message, leave your perspective in the comments, and subscribe if you want to continue exploring stories where one decision reveals everything hidden beneath the surface. Then the phone moved slightly in your soulmate's hand. A notification. Your reply. For a second, they simply stared at your name. Something huge is waiting for you, because before opening your response, your soulmate did something nobody expected. They placed the phone down. They turned toward their family and said, "Whatever this message says, I want you to understand something. I respect what you want for me. But marriage cannot be a decision I make because I am afraid of disappointing people. When I choose it, I want to choose it completely." Nobody interrupted. The person who had originally pushed for an immediate answer slowly nodded. And in that moment, your soulmate realized they had already crossed the most important line. They had found their own voice. Only then did they pick up the phone. They opened your reply. Their expression changed. Not dramatically. Not instantly. First came surprise. Then stillness. Then a small smile they could not hide. Because your message contained something they had secretly hoped to hear. You were willing to talk. But there was one condition. You did not want another conversation filled with hints, half-answers, or uncertainty. If your soulmate wanted to speak with you, this time everything had to be honest. And strangely, that was exactly what they wanted too. Because the family decision had forced them to choose between you and a marriage they were not ready to accept. But your response was about to force an even deeper choice. Would they finally tell you what they had been holding back all along? What your soulmate did next was quieter than a confession, yet far more revealing. They read your message once. Then again. Not because your words were difficult to understand, but because you had removed the one place where they had always hidden. Uncertainty. You were willing to talk, but only if the conversation was real. No vague signals. No carefully protected feelings. No expecting you to guess what they meant. And suddenly, the choice became crystal clear. Your soulmate stepped away from the family discussion and found a quiet place. For the first time that day, nobody was asking them to decide anything. No marriage question. No expectations. No future being planned around them. Just your name glowing on the screen. Stay a little longer, because this is where something unexpected happened. They started writing the truth. Not the polished version. The real version. They admitted that when their family unexpectedly presented this marriage possibility, their first thought had not been about whether the match looked perfect. Their first thought had been you. That realization had surprised even them. Because your soulmate had spent so much time convincing themselves that whatever existed between you could remain unanswered. They thought distance, silence, or time would eventually make the question disappear. Instead, one family decision brought it back stronger than ever. Then they wrote the line they had been afraid to admit. I needed to know whether I was walking away from something real before choosing another future. They paused. Don't skip now, because they almost deleted it. Their old instincts returned for 1 second. Maybe this was too honest. Maybe they should make the message lighter. Maybe they should protect themselves with another carefully worded sentence. But then your condition echoed in their mind. Everything had to be honest. So they left the sentence exactly where it was. And continued. They explained that they were not asking you to promise anything. They were not asking you to immediately choose a future together. They simply wanted both of you to stop allowing assumptions to speak louder than actual words. Because something had become undeniable. Marriage was not the decision that frightened them. Choosing it while wondering about you was what they could no longer accept. Wait until you hear what happened next. Before sending the message, your soulmate returned to the family for one final statement. Everyone expected them to announce whether the marriage discussion could continue. Instead, your soulmate said, "Please don't make another decision for me yet. I need to make this one with clarity." This time, nobody argued. The pressure that had started everything was slowly becoming something else, understanding. And that is when your soulmate realized the unexpected family decision had not ruined their future. It had awakened them to it. They returned to your conversation. Read their message one final time. And pressed send. Now there was nothing left hidden behind silence. Something huge is waiting for you, because your response would determine what happened next. But your soulmate had already changed. They had finally understood that choosing you did not mean making promises before knowing the outcome. It meant choosing to discover the truth before committing their life somewhere else. Minutes later, your reply appeared. Your soulmate opened it immediately. And the very first sentence made them stop completely. Because you had a truth of your own to reveal. And somehow, it connected directly to the reason you had kept your distance all this time. The first truth in your reply overturned everything your soulmate thought they understood. You had not kept your distance because the connection meant nothing. You had stepped back because you could never tell whether they were truly ready to choose their own direction. Every time you sensed something deeper, hesitation appeared. Every time the connection seemed ready to move forward, uncertainty returned. So instead of pushing for an answer, you had allowed space to reveal what words never did. Your soulmate stared at the message. Suddenly, the past looked completely different. Those moments they interpreted as you moving away were not necessarily endings. They were unanswered invitations for clarity. And now the unexpected marriage decision had accomplished what months of wondering could not. It had forced your soulmate to become clear. Don't skip this part, because your message contained another sentence they never expected. I never needed you to choose me because someone pressured you. I needed to know whether you would choose honesty when nobody could choose it for you. That line stayed with them. Your soulmate finally understood why this moment felt bigger than simply deciding whether to continue a marriage discussion. Their family had presented one future. Their feelings for you suggested another. But neither future could be meaningful unless the decision genuinely belonged to them. So they stopped thinking about what everyone wanted. For one quiet moment, they asked themselves the question beneath every other question. What kind of future would I choose if nobody were watching? And the answer surprised them with its simplicity. They wanted a future where important decisions were not built on silence. They wanted conversations that could survive honesty. They wanted the freedom to discover what existed between you without pretending they already knew the ending. Stay till the end, because this is where the family story took another unexpected turn. Your soulmate returned to the room and found the person who had originally introduced the marriage possibility. Instead of another argument, there was a calm question waiting. Have you found your answer? Your soulmate nodded. But their answer was not what anyone expected. They said, I'm not choosing a person tonight. I'm choosing how I want to make the biggest decisions of my life. The room became still. They explained that they would not continue toward marriage until they had explored the truth they had avoided for so long. If the connection with you became something meaningful, they would follow it sincerely. If it did not, they would accept that truth too. But either way, they would never again allow fear of uncertainty to make their choices for them. Something huge is waiting for you, because that statement changed the family's response completely. The same people who had seemed determined to move everything forward began seeing your soulmate differently. Not as someone resisting marriage. Not as someone creating unnecessary complications. But as someone finally taking responsibility for their future. Then came the sentence nobody expected from the family. We can respect that. Your soulmate almost couldn't believe it. The decision that initially appeared to force them between you and marriage had transformed into something far more important. A chance to choose themselves honestly. And then their phone lit up again. Another message from you. Shorter this time. You asked one simple question. If we finally talk without hiding anything, are you prepared for my answer, even if it changes what you imagined? Your soulmate read it slowly. They knew there was no returning to comfortable uncertainty now. So they replied with only a few words. Yes. Tell me the truth. And when your next message arrived, your soulmate realized the biggest revelation had never been inside that family room. It had been waiting with you all along. Nothing could have prepared your soulmate for the simplicity of what you revealed next. There was no dramatic promise in your message. No attempt to guarantee where this connection would lead. Instead, you told them something far more powerful. You had felt the possibility too, but you had been waiting to see whether they could approach you with clarity rather than confusion. Your soulmate went completely still. Because suddenly, every unanswered moment between you had a different meaning. You had noticed the hesitation. You had noticed the almost confessions. You had noticed those conversations that seemed ready to become something deeper before one of you stepped backward. And you had wondered the same thing they had wondered. Was this connection real enough to finally be spoken about? Stay with me, because your next sentence changed the direction again. You told your soulmate that you were willing to have the conversation. But you would not become an escape from a marriage decision. That distinction mattered. You wanted them to choose their own future first. Not run toward you because their family had created pressure. Not make promises simply because they were afraid of losing an opportunity. You wanted the version of them who could stand confidently behind their own decisions. And strangely, hearing that made your soulmate feel more certain, not less. Because you were not asking to be chosen blindly. You were asking for truth. Don't skip this turning point. Your soulmate returned to the family and finally gave them the clearest answer of the entire evening. The marriage conversation stops here for now. No anger. No confusion. No hesitation. They explained that they needed space to understand what they genuinely wanted, and until that clarity existed, moving forward with anyone would be unfair to everyone involved. For the first time, the room did not immediately respond. Then the person who had originally introduced the marriage idea asked, "So you're choosing this other person?" Your soulmate considered the question carefully. And their answer surprised everyone. "I'm choosing to discover the truth before I choose anybody." That was the moment everything changed. Because this was no longer a story about someone being pulled between two directions. Your soulmate had created a third direction. Their own. Something huge is waiting for you, because after the family conversation ended, your soulmate finally contacted you again. This time there were no deleted sentences. No carefully hidden meanings. They asked when you could talk. And when your answer came, something inside them settled. Soon. Not someday. Not when everything became perfect. Soon. For months, perhaps longer, both of you had existed inside possibilities. But possibility was finally becoming conversation, and conversation could become clarity. Wait until the final moment, because your soulmate realized one more thing before putting the phone away. The unexpected family decision had seemed like an obstacle when it first appeared. Now they saw it differently. Without that moment, they might have continued waiting. Continued wondering. Continued assuming there would always be another opportunity to tell you what they truly felt. Instead, life had placed a question directly in front of them. Will you keep choosing what is expected because it feels easier, Or will you finally investigate the future that keeps calling your attention? Your soulmate had answered. But the story was not finished. Because when the two of you finally spoke, you revealed that there was one reason you had never asked them to choose you before. One detail they had completely misunderstood. And once they heard it, they realized this entire connection had been waiting on the same thing from both of you. Not perfect timing. Not certainty. One courageous conversation. The conversation finally began, and within the first few moments your soulmate realized they had misunderstood your silence for far too long. You were not waiting for some perfect romantic gesture. You were not expecting them to predict your thoughts. You had simply noticed something they had never noticed about themselves. Whenever the connection became meaningful, they became careful. Whenever honesty came close, they replaced it with uncertainty. So you stopped pushing. You wanted their next step to belong completely to them. Your soulmate listened without interrupting. And then you revealed the detail they had never considered. There had been a moment in the past when you almost told them everything. You remembered the conversation clearly. Your soulmate remembered it too, but differently. They thought you had suddenly changed the subject because your feelings were not serious. What they never knew was that you had been waiting for one small sign that they were ready to hear the truth. That sign never came. So the moment passed. Stay with this, because your soulmate immediately understood the strange symmetry of what had happened. Both of you had been waiting. You were waiting for clarity from them. They were waiting for certainty from you. Neither person wanted to misread the connection, so both became quieter. And silence created a story that neither of you had actually chosen. Then your soulmate asked the question that had been sitting underneath everything. If the family decision had never happened, would we still be avoiding this conversation? You paused. Your answer was simple. Maybe. That single word changed something. Because suddenly, the unexpected marriage decision no longer looked like the event that almost separated two people. It looked like the event that interrupted an endless cycle of hesitation. Don't skip what happened next. Your soulmate finally told you exactly what they had told their family. The marriage conversation had been paused. They had refused to make a lifelong commitment while their heart was still carrying an unanswered question. But then they added something important. I didn't pause it so you would owe me an answer. You understood immediately. This was no bargain. No pressure. No demand for an instant future. Your soulmate had chosen honesty because they wanted to live honestly, regardless of what happened next. And that was when you finally gave them the clarity they had been searching for. You told them you were willing to explore what existed between you. Slowly. Truthfully. Without pretending either of you could already see the ending. Something huge is waiting for you, because those words gave your soulmate something more valuable than a guaranteed outcome. They gave them a real beginning. For the first time, there was no imaginary future competing against an arranged possibility. There were simply two people agreeing to stop hiding behind assumptions and discover what was actually there. Later, your soulmate returned to their family. Everyone expected another announcement. Instead, your soulmate said something surprisingly calm. I still don't know exactly where this road leads. But now I know which conversation I need to follow before making any decision about marriage. And this time, the family understood. The unexpected decision had forced your soulmate to choose between you and marriage. But the deepest choice had never truly been between two destinations. It was between living according to expectation, and living according to awareness. And just when your soulmate believed the biggest revelation was finally behind them, one family member quietly asked them to stay. They had something to admit. Something about why the marriage conversation had been brought forward so suddenly in the first place. Your soulmate turned back. And what they heard next revealed that the family